Today is Monday, April 25th, 2011. I'm Matthew T.G.
I'm Heath Mulliken.
And I'm Tony Casey. Welcome to the Technology Show, a weekly podcast featuring technology, theology, and everything in between. The world's only user-antagonistic podcast. This is episode 104, and this is a special edition of the Technology Show, featuring our interview with the author of the #1 book on the New York Times nonfiction bestseller list, Reverend Todd Burpo. Todd, welcome to the show.
Thanks for inviting me.
Well, it's great having you.
Well, it's an honor to have you with us. Todd, instead of beginning with the book, we just want to ask you, what has life been like the past few months?
Chaotic. That'd be the word I've come up with.
Did you ever imagine when you started putting all this together and putting it into book form, did you ever imagine it would become really the phenomenon that it has?
Well, I think it's great to have Phil here because I'm sure he can testify that we were clueless.
Right. Well, as you think back to, you were just sharing a little bit earlier, the number of interviews you've done. As you look back, what's the moment in all of the chaos that's come out and been the most special for you and your family?
Well, I think we had we were on the Today Show for a couple segments.
Yeah.
And after we did Kathy Lee and Hoda, we prayed with them and some of the producers and stuff there, read from the Bible, had a prayer meeting on the Today Show set.
Wow.
And if you told me that would have happened before this, I would have probably said, yeah, really. But I was there, and matter of fact, we interviewed with Hoda again this week. They're running a special Dateline segment on Colton's story again now.
Nice.
Great.
Sunday night. What Hoda shared with me, she said, as far as the online videos that people click back on and share, Colton's story is #1 and #2 for all videos Today was ever had.
Wow.
That's great. Listen, from a calling and a professional point of view, I know that you say you're a pastor first. Now, in the light of the success of this book, what does ministry look like for you right now?
Right now, it's pretty difficult in a small town. I think small towns are pretty set on having their pastors available to them, and they don't like to share too much. And we're having a lot of pushback on that. So people ask me, how do you stay grounded? And my answer is, well, pretty much, I just go home.
Family has a way of keeping you grounded, don't they?
Yes,
oh yeah,
yes.
and your local church does too. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, let's jump into the book now. Todd, I know you've told the story of how sick Colton was, and of course, the book "Heaven Is for Real" does a good job of that, and talks about his undiagnosed ruptured appendix. A moment ago, you mentioned Phil Harris, and we have your district superintendent, Phil Harris, on the line on page 21. You talk about being at the Harris's house. So, Phil, we welcome you to the show, and talk to us a little bit about what you guys experienced that weekend in terms of observing Colton and how sick he was.
Well, when Todd and Sonia and Colton, Cassie, Colby were at our house, and Colton was so sick, my wife's first response was it paralleled our own daughter when she was 8 years old, who had a ruptured appendix, undiagnosed, it encapsulated, went gangrene, and she watched Colton in his agony and said, that's so much like Carrie Joe, you have to get him to a doctor. So it was kind of the mom instinct that made a real push to say, you've got to get help, because we knew that kind of structure can go undiagnosed as far as any blood tests. And so it was a push to say, get help for the kid.
Yeah.
Right. Phil, through this whole crisis, how did you see... and even leading up to this, because Todd, and the broken leg and ankle and the financial situation, how did you see the Burpos handle themselves during this entire crisis?
I think God has some way of picking out people He knows He can interrupt, and their obedience will give Him a good reflection of His greatness. Because sometimes it seems like God is picking on people. But I watched Todd and Sonia walk through really tough stuff with significant spiritual strength, stability, and a whole character that just reflected who God was in their lives.
Yeah,
That's great.
Yeah, great testimony. Todd, during Colton's illness, I know this is probably a difficult question, but was there a low point for you?
Well, as a dad, I think the two things that I always want to do is provide and protect for my family,
Yeah.
And my ability to work was taken away from me to provide for my family. I couldn't do that. And then when my son is screaming, "Daddy, make him stop. Don't let him do this to me.
Yeah.
Daddy, why are you letting him do this to me?" as they're wheeling him away.
Yeah.
My lowest of the low. I couldn't protect my son. I couldn't switch places with my son. I couldn't explain to my 3-year-old why these people were hurting him. He knew they were trying to jab needles in his arm, and they couldn't get it. And he's already in pain, and he's just screaming at me. And sometimes you're like, normally when they get hurt, they scream for mom. And he's looking at me, and he's like, "Daddy, protect me, and you're not doing your job." Yeah, I can tell you my lowest of the low moment right there.
Wow.
Todd, for me, that goes right with my favorite part in the entire book, where he says, when I was angry at God because I couldn't go to my son, hold him, and comfort him, God's son was holding my son in his lap. And as I was reading this the other night, that was the point in the book. I had to put it down. I had to go check on my kids. I had to go watch my son sleep, and I had to go watch my girls sleeping. So I guess my question is, having gone through what you did, when you think back, and that line for me has brought me great peace as a father. So has the memories of that and knowing God brought you through, has that brought you peace as you faced other situations with your kids since then?
Yeah, the moment you go back to, I wish I could forget the emotion and the moment. A lot of people ask us, "Do you have pictures of Colton while he was in the hospital?" No way. We thought that we could forget. We were so wrong. We can't forget anything. The pain, the hurt, and now at the same time too, knowing that when I'm doubting and questioning God, not only the peace that I got that, okay, he was holding my son when I'm yelling at him. I write about it in the book when Colton told me that Jesus was answering my prayer. That's why he was sitting back. I've never felt smaller. I knew that I had sinned against God, and I was like, wow, what do I do to fix that? I'm sure I have my moments where, I don't know.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt there. At that point in the book, I could not help but go back to the book of Job and how Job is questioning God, and throughout his experience, he says some harsh things to God. I mean, this is the Tony Casey paraphrase here, but at one point he says, "Hey, I know what kind of a God you are. You're the kind of God that says, get all dressed up, and then you push me in the mud puddle. I know what kind of a God you are. You're the kind of God who punishes the righteous, but you let the unrighteous go." And he just has these indictments against God, and yet two things. God's big enough for the questions, but two, I mean, you just made the statement that you felt like you needed to repent once Colton told you that. And it's interesting that Job, after God questions him, Job's response is, "I have heard of thee with the hearing of mine ear, but now mine eye seeth thee, and I abhor myself." And so there's this real parallel. I mean, Job feels the same thing, that I've questioned the Lord about things I really ultimately don't know about. And isn't that part of what we see being played out in the pages of this book?
Well, in my experience, it sure was. And I look at it this way, too. God loves us, and he does what's best for us, even when we blow it. And I find that incredible. He still works on our behalf, even when we don't do the best of things. But I knew that I needed to confess what I did. I needed to confess my lack of faith at that moment. And Phil was there when I did it. I remember asking him permission to let me do that. You remember that, Phil? We were at district conference.
Absolutely.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit, Phil.
Let me come back to your question. I just muted myself out.
Yeah, well, explain to us that weekend there when Todd felt like he needed to repent about his whole not trusting the Lord through that whole thing.
Well, Todd did a great model, because one of the times he went public was at our ministers and mates, and just felt like he had to tell the team of equals, if you will, and district ministers and spouses, the journey he had been on, and we all needed the healing of realizing we walked through tough stuff, and the problem is too many times we hide what God taught us in that, rather than saying, hey, it was worth the lesson even though I didn't like the process. And Todd was just a remarkable model of amplifying his obedience and going public with it.
How did his colleagues react to it?
With appreciation, gratitude, and love.
Yeah.
There's nobody on easy street.
Yeah, very good. Todd, let me ask you this. As Colton was talking to you and your wife, Sonia, about his experience of being in heaven, at what point did the two of you say, all right, he could not have made that up. He's communicating something that he actually experienced. I mean, was there this kind of aha moment where it all came together for you?
Well, the first time was when he could explain to me where I was while he was in surgery and what I was doing. My wife couldn't have told you where I was and what I was praying. And I mean, I was embarrassed about it. I wasn't going to go share that even with her. I mean, the surgeon couldn't have told me that. The nurses couldn't have told me that. And here my 4-year-old's telling me that and not missing a lick. And I'm sitting there like, Colton, how do you know that? And he's like, well, Dad, I was up above you and I could look down. I could see you. And I couldn't come up with any other explanation except that he was telling me the truth. Because if he was making something up, he would get a detail wrong, but he didn't. Not one detail. And then he could tell me where his mom was, what she was doing. And she's sitting there looking at me going, he's right.
Yeah.
And at that moment, you're like, okay, I don't know what all my son saw, but he can't make this up. He's telling the truth.
I imagine that during this time there were probably some interesting conversations between you and Sonia.
Well, that's an understatement.
Can you kind of give us a little window into some of those?
Well, I think for most of the time we just looked at each other in disbelief because what do you say? I know when Lynn Vincent, who helped me write the book, I would talk to her, tell the story, she'd write it down, then I would edit what she wrote. And she's like, well, what'd you say next? And I'm like, nothing. And she goes, well, why? I didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
I was not prepared to have these conversations with anybody, not to mention my 4-year-old. And I was completely unprepared. So was my wife when she talked to him. I mean, you're sitting there going, he's so far ahead of me, and I don't know where he knows this, but he does, and he's not making it up. What do I say next? And we're looking at each other just confused. You know, a lot of people say, we question your story and we question your son. And I sympathize with him because I did too at first. I was like, I'd read about this in the Bible. Isaiah, he'd seen heaven. He never died. John, of course. Paul talks about someone who was caught up to the third heaven. And, of course, we have people that were resurrected from the dead that came back.
Right.
And yet you're sitting there going, I never expected that to happen to me or my son. I was not ready for these conversations. And many of our conversations were just dumb looks back at each other going, your turn. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I just want to do a follow-up to that, Todd, because I can understand. I mean, you're talking about, some people question this story. Phil, I want to come back to you again. And here's what I mean, one of the reasons you're on the show here, Phil, is you can speak to the character of this family concerning this issue.
Well, even before this all started, I watched Todd and Sonia walk with just phenomenal integrity and persistence in representing God to people in tough situations, and watched them walk through the hurt of their own lives the year before that and some broken leg kind of stuff, and other medical things, to say they just always have kept on base, on track, on cue with God. And then to watch in this story as it unraveled, and I can remember when Todd and Sonia were talking to a friend named Phil who started drafting some of this, just to say, this is what it is, that's all it is, that's all we know, but let God reflect himself through this.
Very good.
Hey, Todd, you talk in the book about the young girl who has done all these drawings of heaven and has had a similar experience to what your son did. What was it like when you showed him the picture of Jesus? And, he had seen all these other pictures of Jesus, like not quite right, and you show him that one, and he's like, I just could picture the conversation. There's kind of this moment of silence, and he's like, Dad, that's it. I mean, I know you didn't need it all validated, but did that just kind of be the cherry on top? Well,
it's one of those things. I had literally come to the point that I felt like I would never see a picture that was right. We had seen so many. You can imagine being a pastor's kid, how many hospitals, churches, Christian bookstores we'd been in. And he'd look at those and say, this is wrong, this is wrong. And when he said that painting was right, I was stunned. But I've been more stunned even after the fact, because I can't tell you how many people have come up to me after the book and said, that's the Jesus we saw too. I was in North Platte, Nebraska, and speaking there, Ron Lauber is the pastor there, and this mother comes up to me with this 5-year-old, and he's got really thick glasses on, and he had the laser eye surgery, and she said, you know, he was in surgery, and we prayed for him not to be scared, and when he woke up, we asked him, were you scared? And he says, no, Mom, I wasn't scared. Jesus was holding my hand. Yeah. Shortly after that, they got a copy of our book, and he's the youngest of 8 kids, and the kids all turned to the pictures first, and his brothers and sisters grabbed the book, and they were looking at that picture, and this 5-year-old walks up to the table and says, Mom, points to it, that's him.
Wow.
She goes, what do you mean that's him? That's who was holding my hand, Mom, right there.
Oh,
and so we've had many more confirmations like that.
Mm. Yeah, we have a question in the chat room. What is it there, Heath?
One of the questions was, you know, a lot of our listeners have read some of Lynn Vince's book, especially Same Kind of Different as Me. What was it like working with her, and what was the process like in putting the book together?
She was great to work with. As a matter of fact, we're really good friends.
Oh, wow.
Our vacation this summer, we're going to her house to vacation. That's how good of friends we are.
Well, that's awesome.
She came down here twice. I think for me, college ruined me. Is that a good way to put it?
Great.
I was the editor for my college newspaper, and so I'm used to writing to professors, and professors make up a very small segment of the population. Fortunately, you know, I think that's a good thing. That's how I write. And so on this collegiate level, it's like talking to a different person. And if I was going to capture the me that's sitting here talking to you, I couldn't write that me. And so I sat down with Lynn Vincent, and I just shared with her the story, told the story just like I'm talking to you. She would write it down. She would ask me questions for more details. And then she would give back to me what she wrote, and I edited it. And that's how we wrote the book. And it actually, we worked for about 3 months, an hour a day, just doing that. And that's how it came together.
Wow. Well, it turned out terrific.
Todd, like I said, most of us, well, all of us here are Wesleyan pastors, and that's one of my draws to the book, is I really connect with you on the level of your, you know, bivocational Wesleyan pastor, and you had the leg injury, and so when you're talking about these bills hitting, and you're talking about dollar amounts, I mean, that hits me. I along with about 80% of Wesleyan pastors in our denomination who are in small rural churches, I mean, that hits me. So my question is, how did being a Wesleyan, how did the sense of community in our denomination play a part in just helping you guys through this?
Well, I think, you know, for us, we're really closely connected to our district and our local church. And I had a lot of district pastor friends calling, praying with me. Matter of fact, Ron, he was the first one that I remember calling me Pastor Job. You know, we kind of banter back and forth with each other. He calls me the controversial pastor, and I'm like, well, back at you. I'm always defending you. And so their friendships, and matter of fact, while we were in North Platte, that's where his church is. And so I remember his daughters, his church people praying with us while we were in the hospital there. I go and speak at a lot of places, and a lot of people today say, well, I'm a Christian, but why do I need church? And I tell them, man, when we had people on the cell phone that we could call and we knew would pray, that was great to have people come visit us, pray with us. And one of the things I'm blessed with today is a congregation that calls on their pastor. I've seen many pastors get sick, and I've been beside their bedside. No one from their church even came. People from my church did, and invaluable.
Hey, Phil, let me just follow up question for you, Phil. What did you experience, or how did you see the pastors on the district and the churches on the district reacting to Todd and Sonia's situation with Colton?
I'm biased. I think we've got a great team of people who really, really care about each other, who value every person on the team, and invest in each other's lives, each other's journeys. In fact, when Todd talked about people praying, I would have had a text from Sonia last night asking for prayer while they were doing a Skype with CNN. So there's just a whole network of people who are lifting each other up as intercessors and letting God mark all of our lives, because when he answers prayers, we have witnesses and rejoice.
I think a lot of times in the press today, whenever the church gets it wrong, then the press is quick to jump on that. But oftentimes the church is getting it right, and this is just a case where you see the church being the church. And if I'm hearing you, Phil, I mean, this was clearly a case where the district this just wasn't an isolated incident at Todd's church, but this became a district concern, and probably, I mean, beyond that as well.
Well, even today, there's other pastors with challenges in their lives, and there's a lot of people praying for them. When you talk about the world jumping on the church, one of my favorite quotes came from Shirley Dobson a number of years ago when I was in a small group. She quoted her husband when she shared her lament of all the bad press we get. And his response was, "Honey, in a dark world, any bright light gets all the bugs."
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Nice.
Well, you know, I got a chance to go down to Texas a couple months ago, and Sonia's sister attends a church down there, Blair Ritchie's church.
Oh, yeah.
And they shared about all the prayer meetings they had for Colton while he was going through this. So my district friends were my closest, but I can tell you of other churches that really prayed for him and prayed for us through our time of trial.
Yeah, they're saying this is a message that people need to hear, that there's this support even beyond, well beyond what we can imagine. People praying that you don't even know, but that are part of the kingdom of God. Well, Todd, I'm going to ask you a question now. I'll be honest, I've looked at a lot of interviews you've done, so I've tried to really probe and get the questions no one else has asked, and I haven't heard this one. So here's what America wants to know. Whose softball game is better, yours or Sonia's?
Is this broadcast for her to see?
Oh, yeah. This will be posted, so for all eternity, she'll be able to watch this.
Yes.
Well, I will say this, just for comedy, they would always put her in front of me in the batting order, so I would be running behind her, pushing her around the bases. We provided a lot of comedic, what shall we say, entertainment for people watching us play together.
I've been dying to ask you that question. And I think Heath has another one of these burning questions here.
How has, I guess it's a two-part question. Is number one, are you still installing garage doors? And how is business? Have people been calling you to, like, are you getting more calls than you used to?
Well, yes and no. Yes, I'm still installing garage doors, but I sold the business back 1st of December to one of my employees. I'm working for him a day a week to help him out. And I thought I was really going to look forward to being promoted to employee, but now I have 7 people working for me for Heaven is for Real, so I was demoted to employer in about 1 month. So, but to be honest, the day a week that I get to work on doors is really my day where I feel normal. I really need it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't doubt it. I mean, that makes sense.
I don't think any of us can even fathom. You know, we know as soon as you're done with us, you got another interview coming up, and so how can people pray for you guys? Because who knows when this whirlwind is going to end, and so how can we pray for you and your family, just that God, you know, would kind of help you deal with all this that's really been thrust upon you here in the last few months?
It has, and I think, you know, God's really revealed to me that this isn't going to end. So we really need wisdom for how to pace ourselves. Right. Everyone looks at me today and say, "You look really tired," and well, they're right. And I understand I can't keep this pace up, so I've got to come up with some options that God can help us be more effective, not only in I think he's revealed to me that the new term for evangelist today is author. And And then not only that, but to be pastor, and I'm still a dad, and so I need balance in my life. That's what I need prayer for. My editor called me this morning, and you would think after 15 weeks, excuse me, at #1, that the book sales would be declining a little bit. And she said we had another week that broke all our records from the week before.
Wow.
Good gracious.
Their book sales are increasing at 10% a week, every week.
Man.
Wow.
They now have 22 translations.
Wow.
The book now hit the bestseller list in Canada. It's the first book that's ever been on Canada's bestseller list for Thomas Nelson.
Wow.
I'm sitting here with the deer in the headlight looks going, God, what'd you get me into? And now it's like, okay, what do I do? So I need wisdom. I need energy. We need to have balance, I guess, and that's what you can really pray for us for.
Well, we'll certainly do that. Todd, we want to thank you so much. We know that this has come at a sacrifice for you to join us, and so we deeply appreciate it.
Yeah.
Let us also say our thanks to Phil. Phil, thanks so much for joining us. I know this was kind of last minute for you. You've been a real sport and a trooper, and thank you for coming in and just shedding some more light on this wonderful, wonderful story.
It's a joy to see what God's up to.
All right. Todd, blessings upon you and upon your family, and keep working on that softball game, man.
Well, you know, right now I don't have much time to play, so it's yeah.
All right.
Thanks for having me, Tony. It's been good, and maybe, like you say, if it works out again, you know who to contact, and maybe we can visit again. Now, I'm the person that's learning. I know when you said Phil was going to be on here, he'd have it all figured out. Me, I was the one I was worried about.
No, you did great.
You did great,
hey,
man.
listen, maybe we'll see you if you go to General Conference. We'll be there. So,
oh yeah, we'll catch you there.
Well,
when is General Conference?
2012.
Okay, well,
June
right
2012.
Now, I got 5 ladies running my calendar, telling me what I can do and when I can go. That's how bad it is.
Well, listen,
So-
you need to tell your ladies, you need to turn General Conference in. Turn those dates into them. And
Well, I'm booked up through March, so if it's after March, we need to get it on the calendar now. I finally told them to stop scheduling stuff.
wow, incredible.
March of 2012. Right? That's got to be. Right?
Yeah. We're already past March. We're almost in May.
Good gracious.
My word. Hey, Phil, make sure he gets elected as a delegate to conference.
Yes.
Then he has to go. Okay, Phil? So you can just orchestrate all this legislatively.
Yeah, there you go.
Phil, you're just smiling. I mean, no response?
That's the way it works in Carolina, right?
Oh, no. Getting our district superintendent in trouble. All right, guys. Todd, I know you have to go. Blessings on you guys. Goodbye.
Hey, thank you, Mark.
Hey, thank y'all.
Excuse me, Anthony.
Yeah, you're all right. All right. Well, for everyone in the chat room, for those of you that joined us live today, we want to thank you. We know this isn't our regular time. You know, there's so much we couldn't get into with Todd, so let's just take the moment to go back to the book.
Right.
One thing I didn't get into in the interview, but I talked about it in the pre-show with you, Heath, is for me, the part of the book that really speaks to me is his grandfather.
Right.
And so Colton talks about seeing his grandfather. This is Todd's grandfather in heaven, his great-grandfather.
Yeah.
And so Todd takes this picture of him as an old man and shows it to Colton. And Colton's response is, "Yeah, I don't know him.
Yeah.
I don't know who it is." And so he contacts his mom and says, "Hey, do you have any pictures of grandfather when he was young?" "Yeah, I've got one." A few weeks later, arrives in the mail, and she shows it to Colton, and Colton's response is, "Oh." What was it? What was his phrase? It was Papa or Poppy or something like that. I forget what he called him. Pop, maybe it was.
Yeah, the name they call him Pop.
Yeah. And one of the things that this book has done for me, it has restored this sense of mystery. I mean, and then for me, that if you ask me the one thing, and this isn't a book of theology, it's not a doctrinal book,
but in what we do. So much of what we do is to nail these things down and help explain these things to people, and so we lose that, don't we? We lose that sense and that piece of mystery because we work so hard in making it
come up with the proof. Right? Here's undeniable proof.
Here's what you need to have. Here's what you need to do. Here's how things are going to be.
Well,
and that is something I hadn't considered, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, I think, and especially in youth ministry, you feel like you have to have the answer to everything.
Yeah.
Because I don't know where I got this from, because there's a fear in youth ministry that if you don't have the answer, that the kid is going to go searching. And God forbid they find the truth of Christ for themselves. And I feel like I spoon-fed kids, and I removed that space. I didn't give them room to go out and really think and I don't know, but
well, listen. You say that as a youth pastor, you felt the pressure to answer questions. My word, in ministry in general, with people, that's what we feel like we have to do. We have to.
It's part of our responsibility. You have to answer. You have to be able to answer questions, right? But you also, to be able to. Maybe we need to do a better job of explaining that there is a mystery. That God is a mystery, and we are never going to be able to nail him down. We're never going to be able to define him fully. We're never going to be able to write a paper or write a book or write whatever that fully explains it. And Heaven is for Real doesn't fully explain it. You read it, and there are still questions. I mean, we talked with Marcy a couple of weeks ago on the show. A couple of weeks ago? 2 weeks ago. And she said, there's still some questions that she has about. It's a mystery.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and we forget that we call it our faith, and we call it faith for a reason. And I mean, Jesus' statement in the gospel to Thomas, "Blessed are those who believe but haven't seen," Thomas, who take it by faith and they walk. And this book, I mean, what it's done for me, it has restored the mystery aspect to this thing, that there are questions that will never be answered, and that's okay with me. I mean, another touching moment in this book for me is when they go to a nursing home, and there's a gentleman there, and he's dying, and Todd says it's clear that he's in the final stages now. His breathing is labored. Todd does the pastoral prayer, and they're walking away. He and Colton are walking away, and they get to the middle of the room, and Colton spins around, and he goes over, and he takes his hand, and he says, "Don't worry, Jesus will be the first one you see."
Oh, man. Yeah. Yeah,
and
that's powerful.
Yeah, it grabs me. I mean, it grabs me, man. And part of that resonated with me in that, don't worry. And a lot of times we fret, and again, I think my segment, the segment of life I'm in right now, are reading all these books about things that are explained sociologically, or they're explained through other different learning theories or developmental theories, which are all good and they get to truths. But at the end of the day, there are some things that cannot be explained, and that's okay.
I think we, in our lives, and life is like a puzzle a lot of times, and when we don't have all the pieces, we feel like we've done something wrong, or God's getting back at me or something. I want to get to the place where I don't have all the pieces, because that's when God does his best work in us, when we don't have it all together. And I
dependency upon him, is that what we're talking about here?
I'm telling you, I mean, I've just been thinking, we've been talking about Love Wins and Rob Bell and all this stuff, but I'm telling you, I have been thinking more about just stuff in the last 2 months and I'm telling you what, I've been asking myself, why haven't I been doing this more? It's almost like I became a robot and just was doing a job.
Yeah. Well,
and we're supposed to be searchers, and I know what I'm looking for, but it's the journey and it's that process of discovery that makes it so awesome.
Yeah. And we give that up. We think that we have it figured out. We think that we've got the full picture. And the best moments in life, my best moments in life, are those times when God just pans back on the picture and says, "Wait, that's not it. There's more." Yeah. I mean, I can remember just a couple instances in my life where that's happened, where I thought things were one way, and then all of a sudden it's like it's zoomed out, and there's this whole other stuff that's happening, and then it happens again, and you're like, "What?" Oh, man.
You know, my thought when you were talking there, Heath, was, isn't it interesting that there are times instead of our faith carrying us, we carry our faith? And there's a difference there. And what you're talking about is this transition that you're going through right now. And I think that part of that happened for me in this book, that I've been so concerned about carrying my faith and trying to validate my faith when, in essence, I wasn't letting my faith carry me. And there's a huge difference there. Big time. Well, again, thank you for everyone who listened to us today.
Book giveaways. Let's talk about that, because we've been pumping that.
Yes, let's talk about the book giveaways.
We've got to have some ways to do this. So I know that I will be giving away personally a copy of a Kindle edition of our of this book, of Heaven is for Real. A Kindle edition you can read not just on an Amazon Kindle, but you can read it on Android phone, anything that's Apple devices, Macs, PCs, Blackberries. I mean, basically everywhere. Do they have a Linux reader even? I think they do, don't they?
That I don't know.
Okay, well, anyways, put you on the spot there. But anyways, you can read it just about anywhere, and what you need to do to win that copy, it'll be given away randomly to somebody who will leave a voicemail comment about this interview. And you can do that by calling us at 3049 Theology. I'm going to put the number right up here on the phone. When you call there, you're going to hear my voice. It's going to be voicemail. There's nobody's going to answer the phone except just our voicemail. Really, it doesn't ring anything except just the answering machine. And you can leave a message there, a comment, further thoughts on your maybe you have further questions or whatever it may be. But leave it there, and one of you who does that will play that those responses on our next episode, hopefully. And then I'll give away a copy of that Amazon Kindle book to whoever.
All right,
wins that.
And listen, we'll give away 2 copies of the book in paperback here. And here's the deal, and it starts right at this moment. The first 2 people who send us an email, we'll let you know on Wednesday when we broadcast. The first 2 people that send an email commenting about the show. I don't care, you can talk about Heath's red shirt. I don't care. The first 2 emails commenting about today's podcast with Todd Burpo, those books will go to the first 2 people who respond. So if we don't get 2 people to respond, no one gets a book, all right?
Yeah. Hey, what about people who we know already have the book? What about Steven?
What about?
He's in there. He's watching. He's gonna win this thing.
Yeah,
he just wants.
Steven is already talking about he hadn't got his last prize.
Oh, Steven, it has nothing to do with me. Steven, it has nothing to do with me. Not at all. That has to do with Heath and Matthew.
No, it's all on me.
Okay.
I'm just gonna take the blame. I'll admit it. It's all on me. Steven, I love you, man. It's coming. It's coming. You know how the USPS is. It takes a while sometimes. Things get lost
Throw
and
the
mixed
post
up in the
office
mail.
under the bus, man. Oh, that's priceless.
Steven, I blame Rob Bell. That's great. That's great.
Okay.
Hey, listen. Go ahead, Heath.
Yeah, you mentioned my red shirt. I'm getting ready to come over here, and I'm wearing my Wesley Seminary shirt, and I thought, I should have wore this Wednesday.
Right.
Because Wednesdays, you guys know, we've got, man, what a great week, man. We're having Dr. Wayne Schmidt, formerly of Kentwood Community Church in Kentwood, Michigan. That's the state there. Somewhere on the hand. But now the dean at Wesley Seminary at Indiana Wesleyan University, he's going to be on the show with us Wednesday at our normal time, just talking about that, and I'm seeing if he can waive the fee for me to audit all the classes. But we're also kind of taking it from the Hispanic perspective of this is
the first MDiv, fully Spanish-speaking MDiv that we know of in the United States. The director of that, Joanne Salas Walker, will be with us as well. We'll be pulling her and Wayne in both by Skype, and Frankie Rodriguez, a guy in our district, is going to be in studio, and he's part of the very first cohort to go through Wesley. Yeah. Your Spanish is so good.
Yes, see.
All right. Also, let me let you know that May the 4th we'll have Zach Woodfin with us. He is the assistant strength coach for the Green Bay Packers.
And can I say this? I'll put this up. Okay. That day, in your honor, Tony,
yes,
and in honor of Zach being here, we're going to give away the DVD Green Bay Packer Super Bowl DVD that day.
Nice.
Yeah.
Can I enter in?
Yes, you can enter.
No, I won't. Yeah, I am so excited about having Zach, and not just to talk to him about sports, but he was part of a ministry in Southern California that we want to talk to him about, and really looking forward to that. Also, a couple of things. His wife does such a great job. She's been going around Green Bay, Wisconsin, and she's been doing these videos of Green Bay. And so I think Zach's been doing some of the camera work, you know.
Nice.
So there's one select cut I want us to play that day. So Zach has this talent.
Oh no.
Yeah. All right. May the 11th, Dr. David Spittle will be in studio with us. He just sent me an email this week, just confirming that again. Looking forward to that. That is going to be such a joy having him in studio, and a great interview. I know it is. May the 18th, Aaron Gadsby will be in studio, and then we'll have pre-recorded some comments by Dr. Norman Wilson on that particular Wednesday. We're going to talk about immigration, undocumented workers, and what should the church's response be to this? And part of the whole idea for this show comes out of my conviction that we're a little too simplistic about this, at least in some sections of the church. And so I would like to see us appreciate this for the complex issue that it really is. And then May the 25th, Kevin Beers will be back with us to talk to us about college ministries. Yeah.
Part 2.
Yeah. All righty. Well, as always, if you have any questions, want to do any follow-up, you can go to our website, thetechnologyshow.com. Again, leave any email questions. Also, the first 2 people that email us will get copies of the book out to you. We'll announce it on Wednesday's show.
Yes.
And
we already
again,
have one winner. I'm not going to say who it is, but we already have one winner. That's it. So.
They're going to get my copy that's already got notes in it and dog-eared and everything.
Oh, my word. That's worth a whole lot. It's got your notes in it.
You autograph it.
Wow. And they used all the crayons in the box. Way to go, Heath.
I colored all the pictures.
And for the Kindle edition, one more time, what number can they call?
If you'd like to enter to leave a comment to win the Kindle edition of the book, call 3049 Theology. All right, 3049 Theology. Leave us a voicemail, and you'll be entered to win.
All right, thank you for joining us. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
You'll say adios, Heath.
Adios.
Yeah, man, what?
Man,
what are you doing?
Letting us down.
Sorry.